President Bola Tinubu's yesterday's signing of the 28.7 trillion naira 2024 appropriation bill has come into law. He assented to the 2024 appropriation bill at a brief ceremony at the presidential villa in Abuja on Monday. The 2024 budget is 1.2 trillion naira higher than the budget he proposed to a joint session of the National Assembly on November 29, 2023. The Senate increased the 2024 budget by 1.2 trillion naira, moving the budget from 27.5 trillion naira to 28.7 trillion naira. According to the reports submitted by the Appropriation Committee led by Senator Solomon Adeola, aggregate expenditure was pegged at 28.7 trillion naira, statutory transfers at 1.7 trillion naira, recurrent expenditure at 8.73 trillion naira, capital expenditure at 9.9 trillion naira, and the GDP at 3.88%. Now, this will be our focus on the program this morning. We'll be talking about what the expectations are. More government expecting more revenue from government-owned enterprises, and now expected an average exchange rate of 800 naira to the dollar, which will boost export income. Economic growth is forecast at 3.88 trillion, as mentioned earlier. Now we have joining us via phone, or via Zoom rather, an economist, a financial analyst as well, Steve Nwachukwu, who is joining us from Nkwere in Imo State. Thank you so much, Steve, for joining us on the Daybreak show this morning. Hello. All right. If you can hear me, Steve, let's talk about this increment of over 1 trillion naira on the initial presentation by President Muhammadu Buhari. Did I say, why is President Muhammadu Buhari's name coming to
you can't let go of President Muhammadu Buhari.
Okay, so the increase on the initial presentation by President Bola Tinubu to the joint session of the National Assembly, is this justifiable to begin with?
Oh, if you remember, thank you once again, if you can hear me, and Happy New Year.
Yeah, same here. Same here.
Okay, if you remember, last time we had discussions around the budget presentation as presented by President Bola Tinubu. I did said that it is within the powers and purviews of the National Assembly to make laws, and such as appropriation bill is part of those laws. So it's still within their powers to tinker with the lines of those bills. It could be one budget line item, it could be some provisions, it could also be the benchmarks. They have the power to actually adjust any of those line items. So to have increased it by 1.2 trillion is still within their powers. They must have looked at things, areas that the executive did not take cognizance of, and they felt that this should have been captured in 2024 budget. So, and they did otherwise. But the question Nigerians will be asking, what are those very line items, that 1.2 trillion that was added? Was it for a personal interest of the National Assembly member, or was it actually to care and cater for the Nigerian populace? That should be the reason, that should be the concern of many Nigerians. But is it within their powers to adjust and tinker with the budget line items? Is within their powers to do so, and they thought it wise to also adjust that budget line item. But most often, that's where the fears of Nigerians are. The increment was actually to serve their personal need. I hope it's not what happened this time.
Exactly, and let me just add, like in furtherance to that question, Nigerians have indeed also raised these concerns and observations on the budget, and one of those groups that have raised that concern is a civil society group budget, which gave its own analysis and raised the concern that an aggregate, or the total sum of the proposed budget as presented is 24.08 trillion naira, leaving about a difference of 3.4 trillion naira unaccounted for. And if you go to the issues of statutory transfers, there are certain agencies that there's no breakdown of their budget, you know, in the appropriation bill. So you have agencies such as the National Judicial Council, the Niger Delta Development Commission, the Universal Basic Education, even the National Assembly. There's no breakdown, and a lot of people feel that this gives room for lack of transparency and ultimately, you know, corruption in the system.
Steve, are you with us?
Hello, Steve. Can you hear me? Hello, Steve?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
So if you can hear me, what I said was about statutory transfers and how some of the agencies under that were missing. There's no breakdown of their budgetary allocation in the 2024 budget. And that's a concern for many, including civil society organizations. Are we ever going to see that change anytime? The National Assembly, for instance, the National Judicial Council, you know, you have organizations like the NDDC, Niger Delta Development Commission, some of the organizations that many experts and observers feel that, you know, have been muddled in corrupt practices.
Thank you so much. I think that is a clause of the matter. That is where the interests of the majority of Nigerians lies. And that should be where you are also, as a new, your interest also should lie. What are those budget line items? What are those budgets that seems like it's hidden, it's not open? Because all we are calling for open governance. We continue to talk about cost of governance is going up, is because of most of these agencies of government that you can barely know what they budgeted for. Like you said, about 26 or 24 trillion, it was actually what you can account for. The rest is like an envelope that is closed and only known for these few politicians, these few individuals that occupy that office knows what is there in for them. So I think the pressure should be on this very government. He has taken the only thing that belongs to Nigerians, or the only palliative that reaches the Nigerians, and told us that he's going to make life more simpler, more better, if he takes this very fuel subsidy away from Nigerians and make sure that he utilizes that money. So Nigerians should be demanding, expecting from Mr. President to have a sort of open government, whereby these agencies of government that they are budget line item is hidden will be made open. We cannot be talking about 4 trillion or thereabout where we cannot account for. This is where those duplications are. This is where the corruptions are going. If Mr. President is sincere and he feels the pulse of Nigerians, he understands what we are feeling, he should make those very budgets of those agencies like the NNPC, the CBN, the NDDC, and the rest of them open for Nigerians. That is where we are calling him to be efficient. This is only way. If those budgets are open, we'll be able to know actually the size of the aggregate budget of national government and its agencies. So I think the pressure, like you mentioned, the CSOs and the rest of them, every one of us should continue to demand and call on government to have a sort of open governance where we can see what they are doing, even in bidding. even in procurement process, it should be made open, and let's have the fairest and the best pricing system so that we don't have these issues around over invoicing. So I think I join my voice on that to call on these very agencies and government. I think like when I said government agencies, is actually on the board of the Mr. President to demand and request that these things are made open so that Nigerians will get to see it.
I mean, one of the things the president made mention is that he's going to hold people accountable for these things. But still, there is still that fear of misappropriation of funds. And this is adding to, you know, with the number 1.2 trillion naira that has been added in the budget. It has added to another chunk load of debt that definitely we know how they're going to service this budget. Majority of the money will be coming from taking loan again for the country. So how do you think that we'll be able to pay back this kind of loan, and how can the government make sure that they checkmate the necessary things? Because our main fear now is, will the money, the budget, be used to do the appropriate things in order for us not to go back and be servicing debt that does not even, you know, benefit the country?
Oh, honestly, thank you for that. Thank you for that honest question. Quite honest question. The 1.2 trillion added, what was it added for? What are those budget line items it was added for? Because what it simply means is also that we are going to look for another 1.2 trillion. That's what it means. Federal government will forced to borrow additional 1.2 trillion. It means that the 9.2 or 9.1 trillion that it was in a existing budget, the deficit have risen above 10 trillion. So I think the best the leadership of this country can offer to us, both on the judiciary, on the executive, and the legislature, is to have an open governance, whereby Nigerians can get to know what they are doing. I know in days and weeks to come, we'll be able to know what they lifted, which ministry or agencies or parasata they lifted their budget. Like I said, most often the fears of many of us and many Nigerians is that most of those budgets or those markups are where these politics are being played. The National Assembly, the minister will lobby them, the head of parasata, the DGs, and the rest will lobby them to lift their budget, not actually for the interest of Nigeria. In fact, we should demand for a proof of that very 1.2 trillion increase.
All right. Steve, there's also another concern about duplication and replication of items from the 2023 supplementary budget and in the 2024 budget as well. So, for instance, we talk about the president and vice president's total allocation for the renovation of their quarters in Lagos and in Abuja, coming to about 28 billion naira. That's the total for the president and the vice president renovation of their quarters and their offices in the Villa and in Lagos. So these are concerns that have been raised, that why are we seeing a duplication? Why would there be an allocation in the 2023 supplementary budget, and then when we come to the 2024 budget, we see the same items repeating themselves?
Steve, are you with us?
I think what you just said is still the fears and the complaints Nigerians will continue to raise. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, please, go ahead. Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay. Take, for instance, you talked about renovation or the building or entire structure of the vice president's office or residential building and the rest. Most of these very politicians connive with the civil servants to continually represent such budget line item. This is over 10, 14 years we've been trying to build the residential quarters or residential of the vice president. This is more than 14 years, and this continue to reoccur. I don't know what most of these agencies of government that has to do with looking at corrupt practices like the ICPC, the EFCC, why that building have not been completed for over 14 years or thereabout now. They will continue to represent those budgets. They will fund them and partially, and they will come back with a huge budget again, and they will fund them maybe 40–50%. They will come back with another huge budget, and that's continue to reoccur. I think now is for most of these very anti-CSOs that are there to fight against corruption to look at such kind of budget line items and pick it up and look at what has been budgeted in the last 10, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. What has been budgeted and what has been provided at finance. If it's more than what is required, I think they should raise the alarm. Yes, something is going on there. You cannot have the residential building of the vice president being built for 14 years. Something is going on. And this is the way politicians are using to siphon money. You can't be building a structure for over 14 years. You continue to represent it. Yes, I know some structures you cannot complete it in 1 year or 2 years. There's a way civil servants do it. They do it in batches. First batch, they may be the surface, the DPC, and the rest of them. Then they will continue in the next year budget to complete it. But this has been occurring for 14 or 13, 12 years now. So CSO, civil society organizations that are into anti-corruption, start looking at such budget line items and raise the alarm where things or infractions or over budgeting or corruption have taken place. But definitely something wrong is going on. You cannot have a structure being built or budgeted for good more than a decade.
Steve, it's quite curious, really. If you talk about doing, the same project for this long time that we've been doing, over a decade, then should we be seeing even as high as 28 billion naira being budgeted for the same project? But that's just by the way. Do you get the sense that this budget is reflective of the urgency and the current needs of Nigerians? Do you see the renewed hope as, the mantra of the current administration in this budget?
My brother, I keep saying it. In absence of hope, life is hopeless. I don't just want to take away the substance of hope from it. It's quite a corny a dilemma for most of us who believe and have faith that tomorrow will be better. But when individuals and characters, some politicians start parading the renewed hope. So for us to jettison the idea of hope, yes, we should have hope. But are we seeing their body language? Are we seeing their disposition, their behavior, their spending culture and attitude that we actually see this very renewed hope? We have not seen. Just take, for instance, the issue we are looking at. About 20 or over 20 billion also budgeted for the same. How can we believe that it's a renewed hope? But let's give them the benefit of that and see what they can do with the 2024 budget. Let's just give them that benefit of that. But from the look of things, we are not seeing the renewed hope. Nigerians are suffering. Things are getting more expensive, hardship. Nigerians are passing through a lot. And we are hearing repetition, over-invoicing, and duplication of budget line items. This is not what Nigerians should be hearing now. Yes, we could have had it 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 years ago, and maybe Nigerians should pardon them then. But now that you have taken away the fuel subsidy and you said you are saving trillions to embark on infrastructural development, and let Nigerians not end up seeing those trillions entering into the private pocket hands in form of this repetition of budget line items. This will not all go well. And we need Mr. President Bola Tinubu to live up to his very said words that is going to make life better for Nigerians. So we need to start seeing things. We need to start seeing real things happening, real things in the sense that if you have to kill most of those because I know for sure too, he may not be aware of most of those budget line items because the parastatals and agencies are quite huge. We have more than 360 or 370 parastatal and agencies of federal government. What they are doing most times you don't know. So this is the time government or the Mr. President will start picking individuals that is trustworthy, individuals that will deliver on his mantra on his 8-point agenda. This is what can only deliver him. If you still have corrupt individuals, characters that will continue to duplicate, continue to inflate budget, continue to make sure that his administration does not achieve what he outlined to achieve for Nigerians, this is where he is going to get it wrong. He should start looking at agencies that has this very controversial budget line items and start querying such agencies and the heads of such agencies. That's the only way that renewed hope can be believed.
Right,
That
Steve,
yes, Nigerians will see something better.
That the president gave when he made mention of the increase on the budget. He said that it is because of the prediction of inflation rates, rising in this year 2024. And if I could recall, the last time we spoke with you, you made mention of the fact that at this point, even the CBN don't really know what to do in order to help the economy to stabilize, the inflation rate. So what do you think the government needs to do for that fear of that prediction coming to reality? Because based on a lot, even though the World Bank's prediction, it is saying that it's going to be a lot more, especially in the northern parts of the country. So what can the government do to tackle the increase of inflation in 2024?
Honestly, I know for sure that President Bola Tinubu is not happy with the rising inflation. Is not happy with the rising cost of living. Is not happy with the situation we have found ourselves in. But what are things he's doing to alleviate or cushion or to meditate against this very rising cost of doing business or rising input cost? What are the basic things that are required for government to be doing to make sure that this very cost is managed? And if it's managed, it will curtail the rising inflation figure, which is above around 28.2% in the last, and which is expected by the month of January. Maybe it may touch 29% or 30%. So I think, like I said earlier, I know for sure he's ambitious. He wants to take it down to somewhere around 21%. But like you asked, what is Mr. President doing to make sure that he meets the 2024 inflation figure target of 21%? So we need to see some of the spendings that will tackle these very shortages we have in grains, shortages in production of agricultural products, shortages in supply of forests to the market. These are the policies, programs, and measures of federal government that will help the inflation curtail. I don't foresee CBN raising the MPR. Anything that takes the MPR, the monetary policy rate, to somewhere around 19 or above 20% will also be detrimental to the economy. So I know for sure that CBN is careful. That's why they are taking a hold position. As at 2 meetings of the CBN, they have actually aborted it so that they don't run the risk of raising the MPR to somewhere around 19% to 20%. So, like I said, there are basic things, there are structural. Government has to be sincere in tackling it. Take, for instance, the issue of the importation of petroleum products. These are also areas government will actually, if you cut it by 50% and make sure that the Port Harcourt refinery has been said is working and functional optimally, maybe 70 to 80% production, maybe Warri refinery followed by Warri refinery. These are the measures government, when he implement that, we start seeing the inflation figure coming down. But most importantly is to make sure that is security. The killings, like the recently killings of the eve of December killings in Plateau and all those places, they've ransacked and killed and destroyed the farmlands or pursued the farmers. These are not good development. If we continue to have insecurities in these areas, that you have farmers that will provide these crop items that will actually make this crop item available to cushion the rising price of this crop item. So government has to tackle security and also make sure some of these farm inputs are made available to farmers. These are the real measures that government will take and see the inflation come down, maybe somewhere around 24% or to 25%. But realistically, we foresee inflation figure going beyond the current 28% because of the hardship, because of the shortages of these very crop items, because of the shortages in the supply curve of our economy. Government has to tackle it, and you have to tackle with good policies, not just throwing money to them. Tackle it, like I said earlier, make sure that at least the refineries are working so that the pressure by NNPC on CBN to import this petroleum product will reduce. Enough resources will be saved and will be channeled to those raw materials or those manufacturers, industries that are looking. So once they get relatively at this $700 or $750 to $800, the prices of their item will come down, and it will help drag inflation down.
Steve.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Steve, let's talk about some of the key assumptions of the 2024 budget. Looking at the revenue projections, do you get the sense that our revenue projection aligns with our fiscal reality in the country at the moment? We are talking about inflation now, and whether or not the revenue projections can actually, be met.
Pardon, I didn't get your question.
Okay, so I'm talking about some of the key assumptions of the 2024 budget, beginning with the revenue projections. Do you get the sense that it aligns with our fiscal realities right now?
Okay, if I got you clear, you're talking about the assumptions or the projection on revenue collection as being targeted by this very 2024 budget.
Yes. Yes. How realistic?
Okay, so of course, we're already having challenges. The recent development around the oil price, which is put at $77.9 dollars per barrel. It's already a challenge. It's already a threat. I think the crude is selling at international market price within that 78 or 77. So it's already a threat to the national budget or revenue to fund the national budget for 2024. There is already existing threat. That's why most of us continue to urge government. The angle you should be looking at is the increased production of crude. The 1.7 or 1.8, 1.7 or 1.6 production projection is too low. What can we do to have 2 million, 2.2, 2.5? It doesn't matter what the OPEC gives you. Yes, we are a member of OPEC, but because you need money, you need resources to fund your budget. This is the best time you can up your production so that you don't go to those debt market looking for money. Crude is your source of funding your budget. So the production should be somewhere above 2 million barrels or 2.2 million barrels so that you have genuine revenue. Like you said, yes, the revenue of the government is already being threatened. Crude is selling around 78 to 77 to $80 when you have the benchmark at 77.95% or $77.95 per barrel. So the area government needs to adjust it is the production angle. Then on the revenues from the customs and the rest of them, we live to see what their projections or their drive to actually make sure that these monies are collected. But the corrupt practices and linkages will also be a challenge to that. But I know for sure automation and taking away human hands will help to, ensure that government meets its about 18 trillion revenue collection for 2024. But is there any threat? Yes, there is threat. There are corruption-related threats. There are also inefficiency-related threats. There are also underproduction threats. There are also the threat of the prevailing international selling price of crude oil.
Steve, There is one of the main issues also affecting the economy is unemployment in the country. And we've seen how even business owners have suffered a loss. You know, a lot of people have become out of a business due to a lot of reasons that it's affecting the economy. So would you say that the 2024 budget would really address the issue of unemployment in Nigeria?
Oh, my apologies. Can you repeat the question?
Okay, yes. I said unemployment, of course, is the main issue in Nigeria. So would you say 2024 budget is going to address the issue of unemployment in Nigeria?
Of course, it's expected. The budget is the wish and aspiration of a political leadership or dispensation. That is where it's been expressed. If you said you're going to lift the unemployment, you're going to create jobs, you're going to, build infrastructure, electricity, airport, roads, they are all contained in your appropriation bill or appropriation act, as it may. So it takes the wish expression of the government being expressed in that appropriation. So the question is, what is the size of investments in critical areas that will give that aggregate number of people that will be lifted from poverty, or that jobs opportunities will be created, or ease of doing business will be made more better for the businesses, environments to thrive. So we believe, and it is the wish of every Nigerian, that the budget is thoroughly implemented. If there is a road that goes from Port Harcourt to Enugu is built, it will help to reduce unemployment. If those roads are constructed and you have people do their business easily, it opens up more businesses, more industries will come. If what you budgeted in insecurity for defense, about 3.2 trillion naira, is being implemented and there is security everywhere, farmers will return to their farmlands, and there are people who actually their source of income is farming. So once that is done, it also helps to lift up the unemployment. So based on the budget line items, it will help to actually lift the unemployment ratio. But like I said, in petroleum sector, that is the oil and gas sector, in the finance, name it, all sectors, just like I talked about the defense, the works, every side of the budget, if it is well implemented, yes, you have an aggregate number of people that will be lifted from unemployment or from poverty to a better life.
Deep into the budget, talking about making sure every sector get what it deserves. The budget made sure that insecurity works, and also education takes, a large number. It is the highest. But then health comes second. And one of the things that we've experienced in 2023 is the Japa syndrome, of health workers leaving Nigeria to abroad. And there's a lot of infrastructural issues when it comes to, the things that is needed in hospitals. We don't even need to even go deep into the primary healthcare of, every state, where you go to villages and there is poor infrastructure there. So would you say that the budget of the health in 2024 is accurate to the issues that is being faced in the country currently? Steve, are you with us? Steve, did you get the question?
Okay, thank you so much. The truth remains that there are 3-4 ways. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Yeah, there are 3-4 ways to look at these issues around the Japa syndrome. One is positive, 2 is detrimental. If you have insufficient, just like the fact and statistics data available suggest that we are lacking in this very manpower area of the doctor. So the little we have are leaving the shores of Nigeria. But if you are looking at it from diaspora remittance, which is the first angle I look at it, it's good for us. Nigerians who are leaving the shores of Nigeria, going to UK, going to Britain, going to UAE to work. Definitely those hard-earned resources or those hard-earned currencies will return to Nigeria in form of diaspora remittance. Is good one. But the most important aspect is to make and secure the health conditions of the economy. If we have, like it's being recommended by United Nations, that you need, I think, a doctor to about 100 people, and we are having a doctor to about, if not up to 100,000. So we have challenges. This is where the government needs to spend a lot in human capital development. Okay. We need to train more doctors. We need to build more hospitals. We need to build more schools that would admit more doctors or train more Nigerians for doctors. This is how things are done. Not when you're having Japa and you are thinking it's all bad. No, what government ought to have been doing now is to make sure that the schools are being provided, faculties of medicine are being provided with the required facilities to train more doctors. That's all we need to do. Start trunking more doctors. Okay. If the world needs our doctors, if the world needs or the global market needs our health practitioners, we should be training them. That is what India did a couple of years or decades ago. We should be training more of doctors, more of nurses, be sending them there, and also make sure we retain the one that can take care of our health system. So, like I said, there are 2-3 ways to look at it. First is to look at the importance of the diaspora remittance to that. And second is to make sure that you secure your populace, because a healthier population is a wealthier population. If we are all sick and we don't have doctors that will take care of us, we will all not, it will not go well with our economy. So what government needs to be doing is to focus on these very areas that the world needs these very practitioners. Government needs to start funding the faculties of medicine, faculties that will produce these very physicians that the world is looking for and Nigerians are looking for. Equipping them is very important. So I expect those budget line items in that education to go down in this line. Thank you.
All right, Steve, there's also something generating concerns about the 2024 budget. We've seen consistent increase on the service-wide votes, which is something that is raising curiosity really about the issues of accountability as well. This time around, we're seeing 4 trillion naira budgeted for service-wide votes, constituting 16% of the 2024 budget. How, in your assessment, have we managed in the previous budgets this service, wide votes, and why do we have to budget this high, and how can we ensure, or how can we track what happens with the service-wide vote?